Hi everybody, this is Brady Self again. I work for Mississippi State University Extension, and I am an extension forester in the northwest part of the state. One of the questions that we get with some regularity is how do we plant trees and what type of equipment do we need to use to plant these trees in artificial regeneration efforts. I'm going to put together a short little video here, not necessarily showing you how to plant trees, but showing you some of the common tools that we can use that are available to you out there for planting seedlings. We're going to concentrate primarily on bare root seedlings, so seedlings without a containerized potting soil type medium around the root systems. I will point out one tool or a couple of tools, I guess, that can be used for that, but I'm going to focus in primarily on tools that we're going to use that are appropriate for planting bare root seedlings, because that's what most of our artificial regeneration uses in today's world. But I'm going to start off with hand tools, and then I'll talk some about machine planting as we progress on. So here very shortly I'll kind of demonstrate how to use some of those tools and talk about the merits and the pros and the cons of each tool. All right, what I want to do is lead you guys through a small demonstration and explanation of some of the hand tools that are available for planting seedlings that you can purchase either online or some stores will actually have a few of these tools in stock. First thing I want to talk about is kind of the standard, the gold standard planting tool that you'll see used in forestry, which is called an OST dibble bar. This like I said, this is kind of the gold standard. This is what most things are going to be planted or used to plant out there with. Real simple, just a metal bar, has kind of a blade. It's going to be about a 3.5–4 inch wide blade, about 10 inches deep, and real simple in use. What they'll do is they will actually stick this thing down in the soil, open up a hole, put the seedling down in that slit that you see, and then move back, reapply the dibble, close the bottom end, and then push the top and kick the hole in. Pretty simple tool. Like I said, you see a lot of those used out there. You get into soils that are a little more, or root systems rather, that need a little more of an opening in the soil for the root system to be able to fit in. You'll see a tool like this used. Obviously, it's still a dibble bar. It's still got that solid blade on the bottom, but what you have is something that's more substantial. It's wider, about the same depth, but you can also see in cross section, it's going to open up a little bit bigger hole. It's kind of triangular in cross section, a lot more weight, easier to get into the ground and open things up a little more readily. It's a little bit heavier, so planting crews don't necessarily like those as well. Both of those are going to be pretty commonly used. They're going to be really good in the pine planting world, not as much once you get into the hardwood world. When you move into the hardwood world, the root systems on a lot of those trees are going to be a lot bigger. It's just a function of what you're talking about planting, and you'll see something like this tool employed pretty regularly. This is a planting shovel. Several different models of this thing that are out there that are available for purchase. Forestry suppliers down in Jackson carries a couple of models. This particular model has a metal handle, which I highly recommend if you're going to go the planting shovel route. We've bought some of these things with wooden shovels, and you get into clay type soils, you will pop that handle out on pretty regularly. I've seen actually some little bitty guys pop handles out of those things pretty quickly. A lot wider, opens a lot bigger hole in the ground. That's the whole purpose of using that shovel. It gives you a wider slit. The problem with this particular tool is once you start going into the ground, this ground is really hard right here. It's on the edge of an ag field. Once you start going into the ground, you can see it's pretty thin. If you were to take a cross section of that shovel, it's actually a pretty thin piece of equipment, right? So you get into heavy clay soils, you'll actually start bending those shovels across across the blade of the shovel. You'll also pop those handles out if it isn't a solid piece handle. Like you see here, this is metal, so you don't expect to pop the handle, versus some of the more I guess I should say less sturdy examples that are out there. This is one that we actually modified. You'll see some brackets welded onto it there to kind of strengthen that handle. These were originally wooden handle shovels, and after a little bit of use, you know, with the handles basically just popped out. You can see where it mounted in here originally. And what happens, those handles started popping out. We had School Forest Shop actually go in and modify those shovels for us to be, you know, better at not breaking when we start using them. Same kind of principle. Open up the hole, and as you can see, you get a lot bigger hole opened up in the soil. Same exact way, our procedure for, you know, planting that you would see on the dibble bar, where you come back behind the hole once the seedling's put in it, kick the base in, kick the top of the soil slit in, and then you would stomp it behind. That's just as simple as that. Another tool that's out there that we don't really see used much anymore is something called a hodad. A hodad was actually designed to use in more mountainous areas. You can see there's kind of an angle on that tool. This one's probably the 100-degree angle. The bracket there that you see is made out of aluminum that attaches the blade to the wooden handle. There's actually a 90-degree model and a 100-degree model. These particular tools were designed to, you know, if you're going upslope basically, and like I said, mountainous terrain, to be able to swing like an axe into the ground ahead of you, and without being, you know, when you're on flat ground. I'll show you kind of what happens when you're on flat ground and you hit that thing. Now see, I made it go in at an angle. I'm sorry, made it go in straight. The problem with that tool and trying to use it on most sites in Mississippi is we plant on pretty flat ground, right? So when you start going in and you start trying to get that tool to go in straight, it's not exactly easy to get a good straight slit where you get your seedlings set up in the correct manner. The other thing is, it's hard to get it in the ground deep enough to get that root system to actually go deep enough when you're planting. I'll show you what happens a lot of time is when somebody will plant it, and I just swung it just exactly like I would if I were swinging a hammer. What happens is it goes in at an angle. I'll show you kind of from the side. That's what happens when you use a hodad. You get seedlings set in at an angle. A lot of times, especially with a 90-degree tool, you'll see something more like this, where you start getting that type of angle. And what that does is it makes the seedlings basically the seedlings start off compromised as far as trying to get them to survive. They can work, like I said, they were designed to work in more mountainous terrain, but you don't see very many people use them in Mississippi. The other tool I want to point out, this one is not real common, but it's a plug planter. If you're familiar with plugs, we're talking about a little tube type planting. It's a seedling that's grown in a tube to basically to keep all those fine root hairs and things like that in the root system. It's designed to keep those hairs undisturbed in that little root ball that comes around the base. So that root ball, in this case, that, you know, it growing inside that tube is going to be something in the neighborhood of, you know, an inch and a half, maybe 2 inches in diameter by 4 to 6 inches long. There are bigger containers, but in this particular case, we're talking about plug container stock, which can be planted with that type of tool. Once you get into those bigger, you know, the square tubes and things like that, square containers and things like that, you're going to go back to the planting shovel. This tool is, there's a couple of types out there. One has a solid solid spike that sets into the ground, which is what we're talking about right here. This one happens to be hollow, and I'll show you. I left it not sticking up in the ground because I wanted you to see it's hollow. So what's supposed to happen when you put this thing in the ground is you know, right off the top there, you get the plug. It basically cuts that plug, pops it out the top, and you move on, and so forth and so on, and you keep going. The problem with this particular tool is, in reality, what happens is, you saw it was open. What happens is this right here. I stuck it in the ground. You see that? Nothing popped out. It's right there. It's stuck inside there. So what you're doing now is you're just creating a little zone of compaction around where you're putting that root system in, which is kind of not necessarily a death knell for you know, planted seedlings, but why start it off that way if you don't have to? And it's not just that one side. You can see every time I put in the soil, this is what happens. Now this soil is not at all a clay soil. I actually picked it up. This soil is a loam soil. I already did the the no ribbon test on my here before I started this video. When you're in clay soils, or even in this case loam soils, or any kind of soil with a compaction, some degree of compaction already, you start putting this type of tool in the ground, and all you're doing is you're creating, like I said, those little cones of compaction underneath the root system that you're trying to put in the ground. You don't get that same type of effect with the bladed tools. There is another one of these tools out there that's actually just a solid spike, that you put in the ground. Frankly, unless you're on just the exact right type of soil, they're going to do the exact same thing. I have seen these things work once in a dry, sandy loam soil where you could get good penetration of the tool into the soil, and it held together enough that it could actually pop out the top of that tube. You just don't get that kind of performance out of it very often. And you'll notice you never saw anything coming out the top. It just keeps, once you clog it, it just stays clogged, and you can't really use that for its intended purpose. So that's the hand tools. What I want to do here in a little while is we're going to go up and look at a tree planter. I may be able to get the guy to hook it up and actually pull it across the soil and across the field and let you see what it does in the soil. If not, we'll explain it. We'll look at the way that particular machine works and how it's used, and then throw in a couple of things, it's a little bit of data on whether hand planting or machine planting is actually more successful. All right, we talked about hand tools earlier and showed you how a lot of those tools are used and what we're looking at from implementation on the ground standpoint. I told you I'd show you what a machine planter looks like, and this is a small one. This is a single seat made by Fesco, which is actually a Mississippi company out of Starkville. It's been around for I believe since the 40s. The way one of these things works, you pull it behind a dozer or a tractor, some other implement, some other of a vehicle across the ground, and that coulter that you see in front there is just a blade. You see, not very thick. It's just a blade that is used to basically sever the roots and kind of open up a slit, and then immediately behind it, you'll see a towed plow. You'll see a pointed plow there that's used to open the ground, spread it out, get it wide enough to be able to drop seedlings down in this chute. And as the seedling goes in the chute and this thing's moving across the ground, you kind of set up a cadence of how fast you want to plant the seedlings. So you're dropping seedlings every however many Mississippis, and then these planting wheels, or packing wheels, whatever you want to call them, come along behind it and close the slit. The problem you run into with that particular implement isn't that it's incapable of planting a lot of seedlings well, so long as just like anything else, so long as the person knows what they're doing. The problem that you run into with that particular type of implement is in situations where you have heavy clay soils, and getting that packing wheel to actually pack those clods of soil down to a point where you don't have any air pockets around the roots can be problematic sometimes. As far as overall efficiency, you're going to be able to plant more on a per day basis with that particular tool, but it's going to cost you a whole heck of a lot more when you start trying to purchase it. So for your large scale planting operations, you think about somebody doing it commercially, that may be the tool that they're looking for. When you're thinking about doing this as on the back 40 and you're just trying to plant a few acres yourself, that's probably not the route you're going to want to go. So what does all that information equate to? Basically, with the options that you have on the ground, when you're looking at trying to plant trees, in artificial regeneration, you have the hand tools, which are again going to be a cheaper purchase option, anywhere from on the low end, 40 would be really low end, 50, 60 bucks probably for some of those tools, upwards of maybe 100 for some of the more expensive options that are out there. Versus several $1,000s when you start talking about trying to buy an actual mechanical tree planter. As far as efficiency and efficacy when it comes to actually planting, using the different methods, whether it's hand planting or machine planting, all the research that's out there, it kind of washes out really when you think about things from a success standpoint. With hand planting in some studies doesn't do any better, in some studies it does do a little better from a success standpoint. versus mechanical. In some cases, you get better planting jobs, and in others, you don't. So really, if you put the seedlings in the ground the right way, the right timing, quality seedlings, and you do everything the right way, we really don't see a lot of benefits in one versus the other. A little bit about numbers real fast, and then we'll log off here. When you're talking about hand planting with some of those hand tools, numbers are all over the charts there as far as what you should be able to expect to actually plant in a given day. Somewhere on the low end of, from a professional crew viewpoint here, somewhere on the low end of about 1,000 trees to the day if in planting pines, on upwards of, I've actually seen some crews, and that's per man day, I've seen some crews have individuals that can plant 3,000 or 4,000 trees to the day, right? Not always going to be a possibility, but there are some people that are capable of planting trees right at that rate. Machine planting, you're going to probably be in that 4,000 to 6,000, maybe 8,000 if you have a crew that works all day long per machine. So both of them can put a lot of seedlings in the ground and do it pretty quickly. Typically, the hand crews are going to be migrant workers. You're going to see those contracted in, and those individuals will come in big crews. So you get if you want to plant a lot of acreage really quick, those hand crews are usually going to be able to plant those acreages, those large acreages faster than somebody that has a machine planter or two. The other thing that kind of comes into play there is that machine planter really has to have the ability to work in an area that doesn't have a lot of vegetation or a lot of logging can't have a lot of steep terrain, things like that. So you'll see a lot more of the hand planting done out there as a whole. If you have any questions about planting in general, or the tools that we talked about, or where you can find those tools, just try to contact one of us at Mississippi State University Extension. You can find all of our information on the website there. If you want to talk to me in particular, you can contact me either through my information that's online there with Mississippi State, or you can just send me an email at brady.self@msstate, one word, two s's, .edu. Thanks.